This is a stub video. If you don't know what that is, well, I'm sorry. So let me turn this on. Yeah. There, now we can see. Well, it's too bright. Anyway, the Sulu archipelago claims that were made to it. Now, this is a really weird thing. Every part of the Earth has a history. And the history is written by whoever is in charge of whatever chunk of dirt you're on. The expression Sulu being associated with a chunk of ground, or any part of the ocean, or Indonesia, or the Philippines, has a timeline to it. So when did it get called that? Someone's saying that there's a list of locations you can use to go from A to B. The location names, if they change over time, kind of pinpoints when this recording was made and whether or not it's authentic back 1,300 years. So anyway, 1300 AD or sometime during that, from 1300 to 1399, the Sulu archipelago was claimed by or part of the Majapahit, I can't pronounce it, empire. Now, these are things where you're looking at the Wikipedia article and you look at the links, and it's old records made many, many years or centuries later, or people mentioning it with a slightly different pronunciation, but giving accurate enough information that you can find out about it. The thing about the Sulu archipelago or just the whole area is that giving it a distinctive name was only done by people who needed to interact with it. There's a place in Sulu that's pretty much listed as the only town that's ever mentioned in some records. So anyway, it was part of an empire in 1300 AD. That's the earliest record of it being specifically mentioned, or some record of that part of the reality in the world, and it wasn't called Sulu necessarily, or it might have been. 1405, independent Sultanate of Sulu claimed it as part of itself, and that is where the name came from. So any reference that is presumed to be before 1405 must have some basis for the name. I'm sure it has a good basis, but I'm doing an RFC RFI, and this is a stub. It's part of the Bruneian Empire from 1485. By 1578, it had been given a sort of independence. In exchange for pearls, literally a payment, a tribute, parts of this whole thing were declared independent, and so was this archipelago. Spanish occupation started in 1844, and 1898 it was American occupation, and then 1946 it became part of the independent nation of the Philippines. And then 1989, supposedly the autonomous region of Muslim Mindanao. Now that part I'm not really sure about, because this is some sort of subgrouping that has control over some part of basically the Philippines. As of right now, it's still listed as being part of the Philippines or being under control of the Philippines. Things get complicated. It's not all simple. You don't have borders and stuff like that with walls or fences necessarily. This is, ocean and dirt and islands and, that sort of thing. There are only a few street photos within what would be called the parts of today of what was Sulu, the thing that was, you know where that is. Actually, no. I got two Google Map links that are specific and a YouTube video. And one of the things about it on the Google Maps is that you see a pathway a doctor took while at sea doing a really fast 360 photo, and being able to stitch together a pathway that he took during his day. This is underrepresented on the maps. This is an area that actually has a history and is mentioned in things, and is mentioned in something that became interesting to me because someone decided to use it as a source of data. It's one of many locations on a pathway that's supposed to lead to Ophir. But there aren't any reliable recordings. And also I should point out some of these, like the Bruneian Empire and the Majapahit Empire, some of them don't have any references because that was just that area over there. I mean, it was just that way. So you find people referring to things mostly by place names or whatever later on. It's not that there wasn't written records or something. It's just that people didn't bother making contemporary recordings. It's like, the joke on a TV show at one time. Does anybody ever go to Chad? Chad is actually a location on Earth. It's actually a place. But the joke that year is it had almost no tourism. It's like if you were looking for the Tukulu, I think is the pronunciation, islands. .tk domain name is run by that little teeny country. It's a group of little, islands that are shaped like little circles. Most people don't know about it. They don't know it. But if you go there, you find out virtually everybody's connected to the internet and has a really tiny population and is one of 18 locations listed as places that you could possibly avoid every form of catastrophe on the planet, including the fact that it doesn't have any oceanic impact points for asteroids. It's considered to be nearly immune from an apocalypse. It may actually not have the stupid coronavirus. But, the joke about it is like, what's .tk? What's this little country? How big is it? About 50 square miles of islands. The UN gave them the top level domain thing. Or whatever. I don't know. I have to look it up again. I had a whole page on it one time. The point is, the Sulu archipelago versus a place called Sulu versus the Sultanate of Sulu. Everything stops from 1300 back, 1340. The only mentions are in anecdotal references and offhand remarks in someone's diary in China or other countries nearby, which is, that would be expected. That's like me mentioning when I was in Portland. I'm not there right now. There's a place that was called Gilds Lake. It has a history to it. It exists. Right now it's gone because it was filled in and drained and turned into an area where you could put, industrial buildings. It's considered low-grade land because it has to be a certain age old after being drained to be considered, premium property. Well, it's becoming premium property now. But at one time it was literally a swamp. So, that's something you look up, and Lewis and Clark mention going through that or not. I don't know. I have to look that up. But anyway, so if anybody has any information about any of the time and date stamps and any other timeline for the Sulu archipelago, that would be great. But as far as I can tell, it was not called anything Sulu on record anywhere before 1300. And the claim made by a particular document that was made many centuries later mentioned it about the same time. So I'm a little dubious about this mentioning, or, again, it's an obvious answer, maybe a bunch of records have been lost a long time ago and it was, it's just common knowledge, but nobody bothered making recordings. Well, they might have, but they're all lost. That's actually a common problem. So if anybody knows of any sources, this is the purpose of the video, RFC, RFI, stub, I need other sources for information, and it's okay as long as they're in text, if they're in other languages. Apparently I can't do it if it's Korean or a couple of other languages, but if you can find it, I need it, because I'm trying to find out the history of each of the locations mentioned in this one story about how to find, some place in history. And it'd be handy if those place names were actually in existence at that time, and this one appears to not have had that name at the time. Don't know. Thanks for watching. Have a good day, and good luck with all of that.